In this video, we're going to talk about the four objects. The first one is going to be rectangles and ellipses, polygons, and the text. So the first one, rectangles, is found here. In the left side, it says create rectangles and square. If you click on it, you can see this rectangular shape. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to choose a fill color, which is available here. This main one is selected into grayscale, but you can also choose other colors here. So I'm going to choose a random one here like that. And then hopefully you can see the fill color in there is changed. Second thing we're going to do is we choose a stroke color. So it's over there in this black one I'm going to choose. I'm going to just choose a dark one, but you have to hold the Shift key and click on black. And then we will have that. So click and drag somewhere in here, and it turns out the thickness of this one is too much. I'm going to go to this fill and stroke dialog, which is available under objects, fill and stroke there. Or you can also right click and the fill and stroke is also available. Go to stroke style, and it happened to be set to 30. I'm just going to change that to 3. So that's fairly narrow in there. So that's that. Also pay attention that your icon is right now in object mode. As you can see over there, this rectangle is selected. For some reason, accidentally, if you click on elsewhere, then it means this object is not selected, but you're still in rectangular mode. By another series of a mistake, if you happen to choose something else like that, if you want to get back to rectangular edit mode, you have to click on that in the selection mode and click on this rectangular object mode, and you're back in this edit mode. And if you're in edit mode, object edit mode, you usually see this circular node. That's how you recognize it. And you see the center mark and things like that. So if you grab on one of these square-shaped node and click on that and move it up and down, you can change the aspect ratio of this rectangle while fixing the other end. If you grab this one, it's going to fix the other end and change the aspect ratio from there. Let me explain the circular node. It's actually two nodes on top of each other. If you grab one and put it down, it's going to turn the corner into a round shape. And if you do this one here to the side part, and it's bent around to the horizontal side over there. So these are the only two options you have in there. I kind of rarely use this particular option for the rectangle. Most of the time I use usual shape of rectangle, but I can see that it could be sometimes useful. But anytime if you want to go back to this square shape and you have a button over here, by clicking on that, it'll put that back into the usual rectangular shape. Or you can click on the circular node holding Shift key, and then it turns out and it's the same thing. So those are pretty much the only option I'd like to discuss, and you can manually type in this location and sizing and things like that. So that's it about editing this object mode. For each of these objects here, I'll repeat the following procedure. I will go ahead and choose this as selection mode, which is you can just type S in here, or you can click on that selection button there. And then I move it over here and then path part, and I'm going to convert that object was created as an object to path, and always distinguish between object and path. Now it's converted to path, so if you click on rectangular mode, you do not see those nodes for object anymore. But if you click on this node, which is very useful down the road, and you will see this node recognize this whole thing as a path. You can also use this shortcut key N, and if you happen to use some of this button frequently, it is a really good idea to know about this shortcut key. It's make your work really flow and fast. Now I'm going to play with these nodes here a little bit. So if you move it around like that, and you can change that. And also here, I'm going to just introduce this very useful thing is something called control, and not just dragging like this, but if you hold control key and then sometimes it's limits. So let me go back to the original mode. So this was a rectangle. If you hold that, click on that node and hold control key and move it to the right, it'll try to stay in the horizontal. So you have to try this control key, and it does various kind of constraints you put into the motion of this node. Sometimes it's very useful. So I'm going to click on the right one in here and hold control key, move it to there, and it's one way to create trapezoid. And you can see you can create other random shape as well. So that's all I wanted to say about rectangles. So let me move on to the next one, ellipse. Right now I'm in selection mode, and let's find the button for the ellipse. Here's ellipses object, create circles, ellipses, and arc. So if you click on that, and we have already selected the fill color and the stroke color, and we adjusted the stroke style. So in my setting, it'll obey that and replicate that. But if you wanted to use this last chosen setting, whenever you create a new object or path, you have to go to Edit menu and Preference, and have to look through that to find that out. I don't think it's too hard, so I'm not going to discuss it here. Maybe at some point later. Let's do that. So we have nodes. There's a square shaped node, and there's a circular shaped node. If you choose the square shaped nodes and moving up and down, that's the only option you have. It's going to change the aspect ratio of the ellipse by choosing this one over here like that. Also change the aspect ratio in the other direction. Let's look at what this circular arc, the circular node is doing. Again, there are the two nodes on top of each other. So if you choose one, moving up there, I think it should go down there first. So maybe I was wrong, moving up there. And it creates this type of arc. And there are different options for this arc shape, and they are always listed in the top there. Whenever you're doing this object, you can find these options up there. So right now, it's doing this option. And if you choose this arc, that is it kind of poked into that, cut into that, the center shape, we have this arc. If you go back and choosing to that arc, and if you close it up, and there are three options there. So by moving in there, and you can further change the shape. But if you move your cursor while you're changing it, it always try to follow the path of the arc. As you can see, as I move this cursor in and out, it also automatically switches these two options. So it's also convenient, but if you don't know, and sometimes this changes, it could be annoying. But be aware that if you go outside, it becomes this Pac-Man shape. If you go inside, it'll try to close it as a kind of convex shape circular arc. So if you want to go back after doing all this, or if you just wanted to have, of course, arc alone, you have to delete this fill area part by clicking on that X button here, and that'll remove inside color, and you can only have an arc around it. So again, I made that mistake, and you have to stay inside to keep that arc shape, but you can always change that using this button. And let me go back to the color in there. That's and if you want to go back to the full ellipse shape, you have to click on that, and it's going to change to the full ellipse shape. And you can also do the same thing, just like the rectangle. You can hold Shift key and click on this circular node, and it's going to put it back into in circular shape. So that's pretty much these options you have for this ellipse object. Like last time, I'm going to switch to selection mode by clicking on S or using that button. Move it over there. I'm going to convert that to object to path, path it in there, and then I'm going to select this node button to see what nodes are available after we're converting it. But also you can just hit N and not going back to this panels of the buttons. So there are 4 nodes available. These are path nodes. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to change that shape a little bit, just playing with this one node. I'm going to play with this node in the left side by clicking on that. I'm going to move it around. Rather than moving it randomly, I'm going to hold the Control key and the drag. And then if you move it to the side, it's going to keep its shape into horizontal shape. So I'm going to move it all the way up there and release it, and then hit S into the selection mode. And then now I transformed this shape into like a boomerang shape. As you can see, if you're looking at this thing, you don't quite imagine it was actually transformed from the ellipse shape. This is actually quite a fun process. Rather than looking at the object and thinking about which regular object shape to use to transform it, rather than in that direction, you can go to all these shapes available, play with this kind of standard variation of this path into different this direction and that direction. That gives you kind of inspiration to how you're going to use later down the road. It's a little bit of a artsy thinking that involved in there. So that's concludes my discussion on ellipse object. Next one is a polygon. Polygon's over here. So if you click on that, mine is right now it's set to polygon, but you always have to look at this top row where various options are listed for those objects. So it's a polygon, so I chose a polygon. If you choose the other one, it's going to create a star shape. But most of the math related thing often we use is polygon, so I'm just going to stick to the polygon thing in here. The corners set to 11, that means it's 11 gone will be sketched in here. That's too much, so I'm going to resize it to 7, and then click and drag it in there, and you can create 7 gone in there. Right now we're in object edit mode, but if you carefully place your cursor into the center and click, and you'll be able to move it in that, move things around within while you're in this edit mode. There's only one node in here, which is a square shaped node. By choosing that, you can change the size, you can rotate it nicely, and that's pretty much the only option we have. I did not fill in the color there, so I'm going to fill in the color, fill in the area with this color down there, random one, and I'm going to use this opportunity to show you how to kind of adjust this color. It turns out this is very useful. You always go to fill color and choose this HSL, is a hue level, saturation level, and lightness. And this turns out for presentation purpose, make it a little bit lighter is always help with the audience, I think, help the audience. So I always adjust a little bit of a lighter than usual. It's really easy on our eyes. So I will do that. And as you can see, there's not much other options you have in there. So that's pretty much it. And I'm going to end it with this conversion and having a little fun with transforming this shape. So I'm going to go to selection mode by clicking S, move it over here, letting you know that it's going to be path now, object to path is converted now. Now, if you do the node by clicking on add, you can see now you have all the 7 nodes. You can just drag it down like that and something like this, and it already looks like a little bit of a horse shape in there. So that's the magic I'm trying to pull out. And here I'm going to introduce another interesting thing. You can move around this node like that, to transform. But you can also, in the path mode, is only possible in these whenever this thing is a path. You can kind of place your cursor in this nodal transformation mode on this edge, not the end of the edge, and click on and pulling it down, it naturally reshapes this straight line into a curve. It's very, very useful tool. So I'm going to use this part in here and pull down a little bit like that and create an image as if it is a little bit of a horse shape. So I'm going to create a little circle and put it in there to make it look like an eye and with the top part of the horse. So I go to the circle and create a little bit of a circle shape in there, put in the all black dot in there, and the selection mode, and put it up over there. That looks like a little horse. And who would have thought it is just transformed or right out of the 7 gone in there. So that concludes the discussion of this polygons object. Right, next one is text. So text is down there with the icon that says A. If you click on that, and let's first think about all the options. The first one up there is a font, and usually I write this type of text in the Century Schoolbook mode, but for this purpose, for decoration part, I will choose something different. This is one of my favorite one here, Arial Rounded Empty Bold. Now as the font is set, the size is now 30. 30 points. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger to somewhere like 56. And I will talk about and explain the rest of these options, some of them later. Turns out, in my experience, you can't pre-select the fill color and stroke color. You just have to write here first, then you can change it. So I'm going to write here is my favorite font like that. After you click on that, just write it, and you'll be able to write this text in this font. All right, let me just select it. So we are in this text object mode, and let me explain some of them. First one here is a superscript. So I'm going to write number 3 to the next one, and I'd like to make this 3 as a superscript that appears right side above a T. Then you have to select 3 by dragging that and go and click on that one. That'll put this one as a superscript, and this one is a subscript, which you can also go through the same procedure. So that is one option. And the second one here is if you place your cursor on that, not clicking on it, it says space between letters. So if I go ahead and select this E and then change this level to 30, and it's probably going to create additional space to the right side. That's what this 30 plus means. If I put a negative in there and then hit enter, it actually creates these. Let me go ahead and explain. This whole thing was a positive space, and it pulled it all the way to the negative side. That's what it just did. So by experimenting it, you may understand this one better. But sometimes the following thing is more natural. You can just play the cursor in there and hit Alt key and arrow. So let me write it down here. What I'm doing is an Alt plus arrow key. That's what I'm doing. I'm going to place the cursor over here, Alt and arrow, and as you can see, it actually creates a space in between. So that's one thing you can do. And one thing over here is the actually displacing each of the letter, and you can do that. But I find following the shortcut key is more convenient. So I'm going to go ahead and choose this letter A. Maybe I'm going to do both of them, A and B, but you can only do that one letter as well. And use this Alt and arrow again, but this time upward arrow. Then it's going to place this things above. And of course, if you hit the down arrow, and that is going to put this one over down below. So you can do that using arrow key, but you can also do that over here by specifying the number. positive meaning above and negative meaning go below. Let me go back to the text object mode again. Last one over here is rotating, rotation. So if I go and choose this Y in there, and if I put this amount, let's say the 30 over there, and it's going to kind of rotate about 30 degree, I bet that's what that magnitude means. Let me go back to this mode again. So these are the options, and I will not explain this one, but it is the orientation of how these thing is written. It's self-explanatory, so you can play with that. So let me go ahead and choose, delete that. So that's the options that we have for the text. And there's many other things you can do using the filters and other commands, but that's the basic things. So that concludes the discussions of the options of the options of the text. And also let me play a little bit with the fill color and the stroke. So I'm going to make it a little bit bigger to exaggerate that effect. So now you can change the color into a little bit of a lighter one like that, or maybe like this, and then you can throw in stroke color. It's a darker one by hold shift key and put the black in there, and you can put a little bit of a stroke out there. It's more fun to see it's in the darker, thicker part in there that looks better. Maybe one more point pixel there and looks exaggerated. So it looks a lot more fun than before. So that's what you can do with the text object. So as the last thing, as usual, I'm going to change that to path under the path menu, object to path. Now it all changed to path. Now if you click on, so let me go ahead and move this one to the path side over there. If you click on this node, you do not see the nodes at all. It is because it is all individual path and they grouped it so that it behaves like one group. Turns out that's how they handle this conversion of a text object to path. So what you have to do, you have to go to object, and under there's ungrouping. So these are all grouped into one thing, so you have to ungroup it. Then as you can see, they're all individually grouped by clicking on somewhere else here like that, and re-click on that one thing. Now it's an individual path. Now if you choose a node button, you can see all these node thing in there. All right, so I'm going to magnify so you can see all the nodes are in there. Now from here, you can make a little personalization as the letter M. I don't know why would be necessary, but it seems like this one like that looks like a fun shape of M rather than usual shape. So go back to the selection mode and unmagnify and move it slightly toward like that. So here you can do some personal touch to your font and after you convert it to a path. So that seems like is the last thing I want to talk about in this video of these 4 objects. It's very useful, and I will see you in the next video.